In the 18th century, people living on New England's coast would bury something in their yard instead of throwing it in their trash. This was so their neighbours would not know how poor they were. What were they hiding? In the 18th century, people living on New England's coast would bury something in their yard, / garden we might call it, instead of throwing it in their trash. This was so their neighbours would not know how poor they were. So what were they hiding?
You know, sometimes you have an idea and you think, I've done it. I've cracked this one. I've got this. So I'm not even going to say it because I don't want to ruin the show by getting it right quickly. Yeah. But if I don't say it...
I'm having the same thing.
I might just be like, well, I could just be wrong. Maybe I meant to say it so they can go, no, dummy.
I'm thinking exactly the same thing here.
Who wants to go first? Because they're probably different ideas.
I'll let you battle it out. I got nothing.
Because this is always the awkward thing with these shows. Like, someone thinks they know. It's like, oh, I think if I go in on this, it's gonna get it. All right, Bill, what did you have?
Okay, my only fact about things in New England that used to be for poor people, but is not necessarily for poor people now.
That's where I was going.
Is lobster. Lobster.
Yeah, we were all going for this one.
Lobster. Years ago, everyone was like, lobster, that comes from the ocean. I wouldn't eat that. I only eat things that graze on grass. Only the poor eat lobster. All the rich folk eat nothing but guinea fowl and pheasant. Right? That was going on in New England. They hadn't lost the accent yet, because that's how all English people said.
And I was thinking they don't have any municipal trash pickup or anything like that. It's the 18th century.
Yeah. So
you've got to get rid of your waste somehow.
And if you put it in just a normal, even if they had like rubbish pickup, you'd put it out the front and your neighbours would look over and be like, Jeffrey, do you see? They've got a lobster in their trash. Oh, look at the poor person eating lobster.
Genuine 18th century accent there. Spot on, Bill.
This is how they sounded. Talk to a linguist. This is the accent. In the South, that's how Shakespeare sounded like Southern England, and New England sounded exactly like this.
Tom, I hear you know nothing about linguistics.
Yeah, you dummy.
Robert, have we done the thing where we've given you a question and then immediately solved it?
You've immediately solved the question. You've got it absolutely 100% right. Yeah. Yes, it was lobsters, which, And it was,
but does it say anything about the voice?
It doesn't mention the voice, no. And I have been in New England. I sat in a bar in New England and listened to people speaking, and I didn't understand what they were saying because their accent was so weird in comparison with my boring British one. But anyway, yes, no, I mean, it is, when I read it, I went, I don't think I'd know that. And then I went, I think I might have worked that one out because I didn't know that whole story about, now that lobsters got him. And I love those things that were like caviar. Caviar was like, whatever, now it's become this incredibly expensive thing. There's quite a lot of foodstuffs that have done that over the years that were...
I feel like the other really interesting one, specifically, like if we stay in that corner of the world geographically, was New York and oysters. And there used to be so many oysters. Like they got to like Manhattan and they're just like, there's nothing but oysters here. That a lot of the old roads in Manhattan used to just be made of oyster. Like there's like an oyster street, and it was called Oyster Street because the entire road was made with just crushed up oyster shell. Because there was so much of it until they overfarmed it.
But the other one is the Dickensian times. I didn't know this, that London pie companies would bulk out their beef pies with oysters that were caught in the River Thames, which, if you can imagine the state of the River Thames now, it's not that good, but back in that time.
Oh, yeah, and they're filter feeders, aren't they? They
are filter feeders. Do not. Why anyone eats a thing that lies on the bottom of the sea and is a filter feeder? What does that tell you? I've never had an oyster.
Mrs. Lovett doesn't seem so bad anymore, does she?
Yeah. Anyway, yes. So there you got it very, very, very quickly. Annoyingly quickly, I'd call that. So no, you're absolutely right. It was the poorer people couldn't afford. I suppose it's turf. They couldn't afford turf. They could only afford surf. And they were ashamed of it. And also, I think, because I do remember in my grandmother's house, she said that's where the midden was. And the midden was where you chucked, because you didn't have dustbins and you only threw away, basically, you only had organic stuff to throw away. But when people dig up middens now, they'll find stone jars and some glass things will survive. And so I suppose if you threw your shells on the midden, everybody would go, oh my God, look at the lobster shells on their midden. So it would be a way but you'd bury it in the hope that they wouldn't see it. It is odd, because I think there's other clues to the state of your wealth, not just shells in your backyard,